pleasant evening to you out there. Many thanks for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at ECWA Television International. Do well to join the conversation. And on National Talk tonight, members of the Tripartite Committee on Minimum Wage, comprising government representatives, organized labor, and the organized private sector, resume negotiation on a new minimum wage for workers in Nigeria. The committee reconvened at the Nikon Luxury Hotel in Abuja on Wednesday. The federal government was represented at the meeting by the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, the Minister of Labor, Nkiruka Onyechiocha, and representative of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, along with the Head of Service of the Federation. On behalf of the organized labor, the President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, and the President of the Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifo, were in attendance. You will recall that one of the conditions for relaxing the strike on Tuesday was that the committee would continue to meet daily for 1 week until an agreement was reached for a new minimum wage for workers. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had directed the committee to speed up the process, compute the figures, and send them to him. The President had also said he was committed to a wage above 60,000 naira, while the TUC and the NLC said they weren't fixated on their 494,000 demand. And moving to Kaduna, the ad hoc committee set up by Kaduna State House of Assembly to investigate all finances, loans, and contracts awarded under the immediate past governor, Nasir El-Rufai, has submitted its reports to the House. Presenting the report during plenary on Wednesday, the chairman of the ad hoc committee, Henry Zakaria, said that most of the loans obtained under the El-Rufai's administration were not used for the purpose of which they were obtained, and in some cases, due process was not followed in securing the loans. Receiving the report, the Speaker of the Kaduna House of Assembly, Yusuf Liman, said the total of 423 billion naira was siphoned by the El-Rufai administration, leaving the state with huge liability. The committee therefore recommended the investigation and prosecution of El-Rufai and some others indicted members of his cabinet by security and anti-corruption agency for abuse of office through the award of contract without due process, division of public funds, diversion of public funds, and money laundering, as well as plaguing Kaduna State into heavy debt. Reacting, El-Rufai, in a statement by his media aide Muyiwa Adekeye, said they served the state with integrity, stressing that he was proud of his record in service. For perspective on National Talk tonight, I'm now joined by a leadership consultant as well as a social analyst, talking about Mr. Samuel Deng Autakiakshi. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Thank you very much and good evening, viewers.
I mean, this is the right time to have you here, and it's good to have you come join us on National Talk despite your busy schedule.
Thank you very much. It's been a while.
Yeah, so let's go straight into the conversation. The senior advocate of Nigeria said, indeed, Nigeria is a living conversation. Every day you have something to actually talk about. And but straight, I want us to begin with the issue of the new national minimum wage. There has been a lot of rigmarole, especially as regards that. And you know, the minimum wage is the minimum remuneration of pay that is for the most vulnerable worker. And based on the constitution, every 5 years this is supposed to be reviewed so that it can meet with the current economic reality. For the one that was reviewed, that was sometimes in 2019. I think it has expired from April, and we're supposed to have the new minimum wage from May. But up till today, there has not been any agreement as regards that. It has been one negotiation or the other.
That's right.
And you will recall that since the removal of the first subsidy, sometimes in May 2023, that has affected other sectors of the economy. And NLC and the TUC have been meeting with the federal government to ensure that there is an upgrade in salary scale of workers so that it reflects the current reality. But as we speak right now, there's still no result as regard that, which even resulted to shut down of the nation, on the 3rd of June. And it was like a total blackout throughout the nation.
Definitely.
So that generated a lot of reaction. Like, why do we have to wait until that
strike action?
So, but as we speak think right now the strike has been relaxed for 5 days to allow negotiation, because
go
the
on.
federal government has stated that they are willing and they are ready to raise it above 60,000 naira.
That's right.
Earlier it was 615,000 that was proposed by Labour Union, and federal government was proposing 48,000, the organized private sector 54. I recall how that the federal government were lambasted as regard that 48,000 naira. How can it even buy a bag of rice? But I would like to quickly get your perspective as regard this whole rigmarole as regard minimum wage.
Well, generally, the minimum wage is simply how much a man earns to make a living in this context per month. And when you look at the history of minimum wage in Nigeria, the problem is not really minimum wage. The problem is inflation. Yeah, because inflation is simply defined as the rate of increase of prices, or let me put it in a very simple layman's term. Inflation is actually the cost of living. So if you have the cost of living increasing over time, and what the average worker is earning every month is not able to sustain that person, then inflation is very high. And so when you have that kind of situation in a country like Nigeria or anywhere around the world, the workers' right is to demand an increase for them to be able to live properly, an increase to improve on the cost of living. So in layman's term again, in Nigeria, when the minimum wage was 30,000, sometimes during was 18,000, sometimes during Jonathan Goodluck, a bag of rice was about 3,500 to 6,000 naira. So that simply tells you that the cost of living at that time was at least somewhere where the lowest worker at the civil service can obtain or can buy a bag of rice after he's paid his monthly salary. But that's not the case that we have today. Inflation has gone very high, simply meaning that the cost of living has gone very high today. The inflation rate in Nigeria, I think if I'm not mistaken, is over 30%, about 40%. It's very high. And again, let me say this in the layman's language, simply means that the cost of living has more than quadrupled. But then the earning has not increased. So what Labour is actually asking is, can you help us? Can you increase the earning of the common man so that he will be able to meet up with the demands, the inflation rate in the market? But there's a problem also with that. There's a problem. So if you follow the NLC and the TUC request over a period of time, they started by asking for a minimum wage of 615,000. They came down to 494,000. Now they are between above 60,000 and 494,000. See, the question is about price stability. The question is not really about how much you can be earning 15,000, and 15,000 naira per month will earn you so much more. You know, when we put price stability in perspective. Now, there are two ways to what is happening right now. And I really think, from my opinion, that if NLC and the TUC wants to do a very good job on asking for more from the federal government, then they should put facilities and collaboration with the federal government to stabilize prices. So we all know that in Nigeria today, once there's an increase of salary, there's an increase of goods and services in the market. So for things that are not even supposed to increase, for example, I mean, you hear a lot of people saying Nigerians were the one killing ourselves. So if somebody bought 10 bags of rice in December for, let's say, for 50,000, 10 bags, and then by January, the government increases the salary of the common man from 18,000 to 50,000. The man who bought the bag of rice for 50,000, 10 bags of 50,000 will automatically increase the cost of one bag of rice, simply because the average man has had his salary increased. So in this case, there's no price stability. In developed countries, there are products that have not increased. I mean, the prices have not increased in the market for a long time. So the reason why we say inflation is very high, actually, so there's no economy that has no inflation of some type. And like I said earlier on, inflation is actually the increase in prices of goods and services in the market. So, but when the increase in prices of the, of this goods and services in the market is happening frequently, it's happening like every day, then inflation is very high. So inflation should be very low, in the sense that Let us experience a bag of rice in the market being sold for, let's say, 10,000 naira for 50 years. Let's experience a bag of rice being sold for, let's say, 8,000 naira for 20 years. The price has not increased. But let's also see where we have, according to the constitution, like you said, that every other year, the salary of the worker is being increased as he moves from one level to another. But that's not the case we have in Nigeria.
Exactly.
And what the problem is that, the problem with that is poor leadership. The problem is you have people who have occupied the position of power and they don't understand the dynamics of civil service. They don't understand the dynamics of power. They don't understand the dynamics of leadership as it directly relates to the improvement of the economic lives of the people they are leading. So to wrap this whole thing up, the tripartite committee is trying to make sure the government is selfish on one side. They don't want to pay more. The TUC and the NLC is fighting for the common man, but without a foundation. And the foundation to fight right, to get it right, is, I said, how do you control price stability? So if for example, this 5 days shutdown to allow negotiation to go on, and if the federal government comes up with 290,000, say, for the minimum wage, what happens in the market? Do we have facilities to make sure that we control price in the market? If the prices of goods in the market are not controlled to remain stable, then I tell you that increase will mean nothing to Nigeria.
Exactly. This just reminds me of when the subsidy was actually removed. You recall that it was during the inauguration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It was just a statement that was made, but immediately the impact
filling
was
stations
felt.
and everybody
just hoard their products and all of that.
Off.
The next day it was queue and prices went high.
Exactly.
And you know, a lot of economists, a lot of people are shared concern, especially as regard inflation. And you will recall that, like you rightly said, almost everywhere in the world there's actually inflation.
There's a level of inflation,
and especially
everywhere.
when you have like a lot of cash floating, and you talk about maybe the government on their side, there's a bit of selfishness, but do you not think that they are also worried about inflation going high?
Yeah, so if the government is worried about inflation going very high, what the government should do, and I think, is simply saying, okay, NLC, TUC, we're not going to take this above 60,000, but this is what we're going to do. We'll make sure the price of rice returns to 8,000. We'll make sure a bag of rice is bought for 8,000, just like we have it like 8 years or 10 years ago or 12 years ago or 15 years ago. You know, this is what we are going to do. The government is not talking about that. The government is not talking about price stability. The government is just scared about inflation. But what are they doing? As a matter of fact, just to let you know that the government has not really put her cards very right. Before the talk of TUC and NLC for the increase of minimum wage, when this government came up, inflation went very high.
True.
So what happened, you know? So we're talking about a leadership. It has been going high. And then for me, I think the government does not really have, at the federal level, a team, the right team, compared to previous government that we have had in this country, where a dynamic team is put together that understand the economic dynamics of Nigeria, and they cut down certain foreign policies that would not work in this country. And they say, we're not going to work with this, we're not going to work with that, based on the customized systems that we have in this country. This government has not really done well when it comes to looking at what works. For example, I have a problem with this government at every instant increasing taxes, introducing new taxes. There is no country that is built on the increase of taxes. There's no people that are developed by increasing the loads they are carrying. Government for the people, by the people, and for the people is to make things easier for them. But that's not what we have seen in the last 1 year since the coming of this administration. And that's not to exonerate the previous administration. They started this whole stuff, and it's getting worse, by the day. So I think what government should begin to look at, government should not be scared about NLC and TUC asking for a raise in salary. They should be much more concerned about the policies, the simple basic economic policies that they need to put on ground, and make sure they enforce those policies to make sure we have price stability. So if you prices of products like tin milk, pig milk. You know, these days you have those sachet pig milks. The size of the package remains the same, but the quantity of the content is like half of it.
Very true, very
So what do we do about that? Government's not doing anything about that. So those days when we buy a sachet of pig milk, you can do 2 cups of tea with it.
Sure.
At the moment, one is not even enough for a cup of tea.
That's true.
So that's actually what we're talking about. So I think NLC is fighting a good fight. TUC in collaboration, all the stakeholders in Nigerian Labour, you know, of the Nigerian Labour Congress are fighting for the right thing. But let's build a foundation for this fight.
Exactly.
Let's collaborate with the federal government and build a foundation. And the foundation is saying, how do we cope? How do we bring about price stability?
I've had interactions with a lot of people across sections of the street, and there's actually, for those people that are advocating, oh, we should have the increase, others are scared of the increase.
Yes, the impact of the increase.
Yes, the impact of increase. I
Yes.
recall talking to one of the civil servants, and she was like, I think they should just leave it at what we are
Where it
in,
is, yes.
because these
Yes.
market people, once they just hear that there's an increase,
They move their things up, move the custom.
it looks like we have a lot of beautiful policies, but the methodology and then implementation is actually poor. Like you rightly established, there are things we need to consider, the dynamics
Yes.
of our nation. We need to consider the dynamics of our
Very
society
well.
before going on with
Very
these
well.
policies.
Very
but
well.
still bouncing back to leadership, it was within the week that there was an economic meeting, and we saw how that the Minister of Budget and Planning was talking about 40% of Nigerians living below poverty line. And some people were asking, who is the cause? Bounce back to leaders.
Exactly.
Because if we don't have policies
Governance.
that empower the people,
people.
policy that make
Yes.
the environment enabling,
Yeah.
then of
Yeah.
course people will not be employed. People will not like have things to do that will generate
Definitely.
income or bring them out of poverty.
Definitely.
So it's really important that leaders at all levels consider that they have a responsibility. Recall that the national tax policy of 2017, it was aimed at reducing some of these taxes. But today we keep seeing more
Cyber
taxes.
security tax, all this, all manner of taxes being introduced.
Very
Let me make a comment about this human capital that you're talking about, because see, the government's priority should be actually a human capital development.
Sure.
So when you have a government that has a misplaced priority, should look at infrastructural development at the expense of human capital development. In over 60 years of independence, Nigeria has done very, very poor. And when I say Nigeria, I'm talking about the federal government of Nigeria in our leadership. Nigeria has done very, very poor when it comes to human capital development. When it comes to personal development, more Nigerians who will personally develop has achieved that as a result of over 75% effort, personal efforts, not in collaboration with the environment that the government has built. So the government has created very little or zero opportunities for people to personally develop and achieve that environment, that achieve that dream they want to achieve in Nigeria. Hence the Japan syndrome that is everywhere. Countries like Canada, like America, just name them, they are cutting away our best people. So I tell you, everyone that is leaving this country through the through the legal channel is one of our best. So they take our best doctors, they create this level of qualifications, and if you don't meet the qualifications, you're gone. It will be surprising for you to know that we don't have up to 35,000 doctors in Nigeria in a population of over 220 million people, and they are still living. How about nurses? Hundreds of them, thousands of them are living every day. So they get trained in Nigeria and they get employed outside of Nigeria. It goes ahead to tell you the government's bad policy, poor policy on talent management, retaining the best we have in this country. There's no way you can keep a talent in a box. There's no way you can hide a talent. When a person is talented, nobody needs to tell him. He knows he's talented. He knows I can do this. And what that person is looking for is an opportunity to express that talent. And if the environment does not give him the opportunity, he becomes like a water. Water will always find its way. So if Canada is calling that person, he leaves. If America is calling him and giving him more opportunity, he leaves. So there's a shortage of workforce over there. Then God has blessed Nigeria with this workforce, but we don't value them. And how do I know that the government of Nigeria does not value this vast range of human capital that we have? Because there's no policy to retain this talents.
All right, let's talk about the body language in all of these, and then
Yes.
talking about utilizing human capital development, or looking at human capital development, utilizing talent.
Yeah.
Now, look at how long this negotiation have been going back and forth, just for a minimum wage that should be agreed upon.
Yes.
As we speak right now, the federal government say, okay, we are agreeing to raise it above 60,000, and LNC are saying, oh, we are sticking to 494,000 naira.
Yes.
We have statistics to back our claim. The federal government did not present any statistics to back why they are saying, oh, they are sticking to 60,000 or going above that. Though hopeful that something will come out of that, because we don't want to still return back to the case of strike. Like a lot of people are saying, why do we have to wait till there a strike before an action is going to be taken? Though some people say, oh, that's the only language that the government actually understand. But I would like you to speak to the body language. Earlier I was talking about how that, okay, probably they are mindful of inflation if they are going by the figures that the NLC are actually giving. But today in Nigeria, we have senators that receive up to 30 million naira.
Much more.
You understand? And yet they are scared of raising the minimum wage.
So the problem is visionary leadership, okay? Visionary leadership. And what's visionary leadership? It's seeing the end from the beginning. It's seeing the condition of the people. It's seeing the current situation of the state. So I give you a typical example of what we need to bring to perspective when we talk about visionary leadership. Oxfam in 2014 report says that there are over 115 million Nigerians living below the poverty rate of about $1.5 in a day. If you go around and carry out the statistics on the plateau, for example, where we are, you want to find out how many people spend about 500 naira every day. There are very few people who spend about 500. But just to let you also know that the statistics have said that Plateau, where we are, is among the 5 poorest states in Nigeria. And if Nigeria had become the headquarters of world poverty some years ago, before the previous administration exited power, then this incumbent should have put in perspective these problems to say, we're coming to return Nigeria into a conglomerate. We're coming to return Nigeria into a prosperous nation. We're not coming to put more work on the people. So visionary leadership is understanding the dynamics, is understanding the problems and dissecting the problems properly. But I'll tell you one thing that complements visionary leadership is team dynamics. So when you are coming with a vision for a people, for the largest black nation on earth, you should have in mind that there's no leadership plans or leadership vision that succeeds without a team. So you got to make sure that, do I have the right team? Who are the people that will come and help us fix this problem? So I tell you, one of the biggest problems of this present administration is that they lack team. There's no team. Most of the ministers today have EFCC cases. Most of the appointees, are being chased by EFCC. Immunity is actually, blocking EFCC from arresting them and prosecuting them. I mean, this statistic is all over the internet. How do you bring a gang of criminals in a team to change or to transform a people? It's impossible. It's not going to work. So that's where the problem is when it comes to leadership. We have, as a matter of fact, even the president has cases against him before he won the election, or before he was declared winner. We all know that there were allegations about him pushing drugs in America many years ago. He jumped the bail and left in his account over 400,000 US dollars, just left it like that. Some politicians have tried to make the American government to open that case, present the file, prosecute this man, but they have not done that because of selfish interest. The point I'm trying to say is, one other major problem, like you said, these senators are earning more, these ministers are earning more. Why don't they want to increase the minimum wage of these people? The answer is very simple. We have a gang of criminals. So if we see you have 90 people in the leadership of this country, for example, then you just realize that from the examples I've given you, you have over 75 of them being criminals. And it means that they are the majority in power. And when you have a selfish man in power, you should not expect any kind
because
of
it just look like our leaders are just insensitive. I recall the president over and over again asking Nigerians to be patient. Yes, we keep seeing them.
1 year has gone and we're still patient.
Yes, and then on the part of the leaders, you're not seeing any semblance of patience. Like I just spoke about salaries of senators, like amounting to 30 million.
Exactly.
And just a breakdown of some of the figures. Furniture allowance is pegged at 7.45 million naira. Accommodation allowance is pegged at 5 million naira. Vehicle allowance is 10 million naira. Vehicle maintenance is 1.8 million naira. And they even have hardship allowance that is pegged at 1.2 million.
When it is
I'm
actually the
wondering who is actually suffering. Is it
the poor man that's going
or
through
the senators?
right now.
But they are having allowance for hardship, 1.2 million naira. I mean, we're talking about monthly allowance. This thing, they get it monthly in a country that is said to be the poverty capital, where even the minister of budget and planning is saying 40% of Nigerians are living below poverty line. I just wonder why we keep seeing budget of National Assembly going high, increasing, but when there are conversations
and the lives of Nigerians are not changing.
Do you understand? When it comes to increasing minimum wage, you keep seeing back and forth dragging. Like, look at how the old national anthem was brought back. It was so swift. And Nigerians are wondering, why can't we have that?
Why can't we do that on very important policy that will change the lives of Nigerians? If we can pass the bill to change the national anthem in one day, we can pass the bill to change the policies that are bringing difficulties in the life of these people. Let me give you one other example that will let you, so that our viewers can understand the kind of hardship that poor Nigerians are going through today. The ease of doing business in this country is very, 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 the ease of doing business. I mean, it's so difficult. Let me put it in a language where we all understand. It's so difficult to do business in Nigeria. Doing business in Nigeria today is like doing business in Honduras, where it is the criminal gangster that control the business environment. So if today you have a woman, let me use Plateau again as an example, who have to take her goods from Miango, her vegetables, to building materials market. Before she gets to building material that early morning, she would have seen like 3 roadblocks by VIU, by road safety, by illegal police. She needs to get to the market early in the morning so she can sell these goods. The VIO are not concerned about her. They are concerned about the drivers, your particulars, your people. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria today, I would even suggest that, look, there are certain things that should be a waiver. There are certain things that should be a waiver so that people can make a living. Today, the VIO will stop a business vehicle that is carrying goods and services to a place where they're supposed to meet the needs of certain people, and they will keep it for 3 days, 1 week, and the man who owns that good is losing. Tell me why this man will not cut corners to have his way going. Why can't we alleviate the suffering of these people by bringing in policies that will say, today for every business, blah blah blah, put this in writing and let's pass it in 1 day, just like we have the bill for changing the national anthem happen, in 1 day. So to wrap this up here again, I just want to say that there are people who don't understand what leadership is all about. Leadership is for the people. Leadership is to transform the lives of the people. There are different categories of people. So when you have an unselfish man who understands the plight and the suffering of the people, when he occupies a position of leadership, he will do what the people will say, oh no, this man has actually come for us. And by the way, it may be important to actually define the 3 elements of leadership here. So position is not leadership. Title is not leadership. That's why a lot of Nigerians get confused. But the guy is a senator, but he's not doing this. Does him being a senator makes him a leader automatically? It doesn't. It doesn't. So we have people who occupy the position of leadership, but they are not leaders. How do you know that a man is a leader? Number 1, the man understands the plight and the suffering of his people and he wants to change it. Number 2, the man is occupying a position where it has influence. You can be a leader, but if you don't have influence, it will make no impact. You can have a community leader in Angwan Rukuba or somewhere in Abuja. If he's not occupying the position of that senator, that he will use that position to influence policy change, that position he's occupying or whatever he is useless. So you must have a man who is passionate. The man must occupy a position of leadership. And the third element is that this man must come with leadership virtues. He must come with leadership skills. Leadership skills for negotiation, leadership skills to understand that we are now in the world poverty headquarters and we must change it. How do we change it? We need to improve the lives of the people. How do we improve the life of the people? We need to maximize the economic potentials of our nation. How do we maximize the economic potential of our nation? We need to stop importing what we can produce in Nigeria. We need to start producing what we are eating. And all these things that we've been saying over the years, there has not yet been a leader that will put these things into practice.
Honestly, I really hope and I look forward to a time where we'll actually have leaders that will look into the plight
I believe
of the
that
people,
too. That time is coming.
Because I wonder why in 2024 we are having a National Assembly budget pegged at 344.9 billion naira,
yes,
and minimum wage at 30,000 naira. Like, I don't see
it doesn't make sense. There's no correlation.
Really sense. Yeah. And no wonder some people have been advocating for equal distribution of wealth. Some are actually advocating that maybe our lawmakers and political leaders should also be under the minimum wage. That way they will feel the pain of the people and might want to do something about it.
That's also one of the reasons why you have some part of the country agitating for secession. We want to leave because we are not seeing the dividends of what you're doing. These resources has been taken from our own land, but yet we are still in poverty. These are some of poor leadership, poor governance, poor everything.
Okay, so it actually it feels like we're at a point where everybody is actually looking for a way out.
Yeah.
While the federal government are saying, okay, because of these 2 days blackout, the national grid was shut down, and I heard the likes of Akume saying that's treasonable. The likes of the Senate president were saying, oh, it's economic sabotage and all of that. But I was wondering, how many times did we have just this year national grid being shut down, where apologies were made, and because of the strike of 2 days that national grid, oh, it's treasonable,
they are carrying
economic sabotage and all of that. But the federal government, the president, has shown readiness to actually go above the 60,000, and then the labor union are saying, okay, we are pegging at 400, and they went down from the 615 to 494,000. So it looks like everybody is trying to look for a way out. But I would like to get your perspective on all of these, so that we don't go back to what we had. You know, strike is like, in some people's opinion, like it's injurious to the people.
It is very
even to the country. There are actually implications to that. And Nigeria has actually faced that in the between 3rd and 4th of June. So, but what, in your opinion, is the way out? Because the organized labor are saying we are just relaxing the strike for 5 days.
For 5 days, and we'll go back again
if nothing is being done. So what's your opinion?
It's very simple. There will always be a meeting point, right? So 2 wrongs cannot make a right. So the government will either shield her sword, or NLC will shield her sword. But in this case, I don't see NLC shielding her sword. So the government will have to look at the reality of the statistics of the economic lifestyle of Nigerians. Nigerians are really suffering right now. So the government will have to say, we are coming to this level. But you see, my point, like I said earlier, is when we come to a meeting point, can we back it up with a strong policy for price stability? Otherwise, you see, if you're buying a bag of rice for 66,000 right now, and the minimum wage is 30,000, right? And you say, okay, we are going to give you 60,000 now. But by the time the government gives you 60,000, and the bag of rice goes for how many thousand now? 120,000. It doesn't make sense. Bag of rice currently in the market is 66,000 plus or minus, and we're earning, the minimum wage is 30,000. It means it cannot buy a bag of rice. So if they give you 60 and they don't stop the price for bag of rice to remain at 30,000, and they allow you to move to 60,000, it means they've done nothing. It's plus or minus. Yeah, the positive will cancel the negative. So my opinion on this minimum wage, the government and the NLC, they will always come to, nobody will tell them, they will come to a meeting point, but the meeting point should be back up with the price stability that will be enforced. Enforce it. If any marketer, if anybody increases the goods and services that the economic dynamics has actually said that this should not increase, this should not affect ABCD, and if anybody raises it up, that person should be prosecuted properly. If that is done, then I tell you that even if the government stops at 100,000 naira, it will still make sense. So what that simply means that we're going to control inflation. We're going to stop the increase of prices of goods and services rapidly and allow them to go slowly over a period of time. When that is done, it's simple basic economics, I tell you. And this is
price control is very sacrosanct at this
it's very
point, and
sacrosanct
I think
here.
we need to
Yes.
also consider production
Exactly.
as well.
Yes, we need to
That's
start manufacturing in Nigeria.
Very true.
We've spoken about that. We need to, for example, there are quite a lot of things. Okay, see, one example is, why do you stop the importation of rice when we are not even producing enough for ourselves? Why? It doesn't make sense. So if you say, okay, if you say we stop importation because we should start producing what we should eat, then why have you not created an environment, a friendly environment for our local farmers to produce this? How many rice mills do we have in this country? Rice is a staple, food in Nigeria. How many rice mills do we have in the rice producing, regions of this country? Very few. Very few. So if the government is saying that for every region, for every state that produces rice, we're going to make sure we establish global standard rice mills in those states. Let the farmers cultivate their rice and bring it here. The border is open. We don't care. The man who will go to America or Hungary or China to import rice to Nigeria will think twice, because there's a large production going on in Nigeria at the minimal cost. And so what that simply means that Nigerians will be able to produce what they will eat at an affordable price. So the government should look at that too.
I mean, we really need to look inward and do the needful.
Yes.
But I would like to draw your attention back to Kaduna State, away from the federal government. Now talking about alleged corruption. The former governor, immediate past governor, Nasir El-Rufai, has been on the media for the wrong reason, lately. And it was due to a previous complaint by the governor as regards finances and liabilities, that he has inherited a lot of debt. Money is coming from federal government, but he is unable to do a lot of projects because there are actually debts that have been incurred, and the State House of Assembly decided to actually come up with an ad hoc committee to investigate all finances, loans and contracts that were awarded under the immediate past governor, who is Nasir El-Rufai. And Wednesday during the plenary, the report was actually submitted by the chairman of that ad hoc committee, Henry Zakaria, said that most of the loans, that's from their findings now, that most of the loans that were obtained under El-Rufai administrations were not for the purpose for which they were obtained. And he said in some cases due process was not actually followed in securing that loan. And the Speaker of the House, talking about Yusuf Liman, went ahead to explain how that 423 billion was siphoned under the administration of El-Rufai, and that has made the committee to call for investigation and even prosecution of Nasir El-Rufai and some of the people that were indicted in that finding. And this just draw my mind back to even Kogi. Recently was Kogi State talking about 80 billion, alleged 80 billion
for school fees.
For school fees, I heard when people are dying of hunger. And now Nasir El-Rufai, the almighty Nasir, that has been on the, we are talking about politically, you know that he's one of them, controversial. So, but today we're talking about 423 billion naira that has been siphoned. So it's still at the level of allegation, but I just want to get your take on this, because it's like an issue of, they said in politics there's no
there's no permanent friends, there's no permanent enemies.
And but this one generated a lot of concern. You know how that the current president and the immediate past governor, the current governor and then the immediate past governor are actually allies. They are friends and from the same political party. And this is coming up. Some people have linked it to, oh, this is just one of these politics. That's what even the media aid to Nasir El-Rufai is actually saying. But I would like you to just comment on this report.
Thank you very much for that. There's actually a difference between the El-Rufai as the governor and the El-Rufai as a minister, and the El-Rufai as the BP, the BPE, chairman, where he started. Now, if you follow the history of El-Rufai, you realize that, to be very honest, this man has done so much for Nigeria. That's the truth about it. He was one of the key role player in the Abdul Salam transition committee that facilitated, brought out a lot of documents, put them down, that handed over government from the military power to the democratically elected government that brought in Obasanjo. El-Rufai played a very key role there. As a matter of fact, some of the roles he played were so key that he didn't even mention that in his very famous book called The Accidental Public Servant. So there was a man who was very passionate about Nigeria. There was a man who was a Nigerian patriot. There was a man who meant very well for Nigeria, and he did so well. The face of Abuja today, you give it to El-Rufai, the transformation of Abuja, the taking away of the slum nature of Abuja into a modern federal capital territory was the work of El-Rufai. So you can give it to that man, and you say he did fantastically well. When the man came out of that place, and I'm so surprised because he went to America, went to Harvard School of Governance and Policy, backed up a degree. He came back and became a governor. Then we began to see a different man entirely. What happened? I actually don't know. What happened? I don't know. This news that is actually on the media right now has a committee. There's a 13-man committee that the House of Assembly has set up to look at the case. And you see, you can't fight evidence. You can't fight numbers. Every man has his excesses. Every man can be faulty. If you forget where you're coming from, you will actually forget where you're going. I think my comment on this is that the House of Assembly is actually doing some work to unravel this. As a matter of fact, they have submitted their report, and their recommendation is for the state governor to refer the cases to the Financial Crime Commission, where these people will be invited and prosecuted, be probed. So at the moment, a report has been submitted. His media aid has denied it. So according to law, we will say El-Rufai is not guilty until proven guilty. So this is a very dicey case, because I remember El-Rufai saying, in a meeting, that he's not going to hand over government to anybody who will destroy what he has done for Kaduna State. So Obasani happens to be one of his trusted ally, one of those persons that worked very closely to him, and he loved him. They loved each other. And what happened? Time will tell. But there are serious allegations, when Obasani couldn't pay salaries, and people said, "Oh no, this man left so much for you. Why are you talking?" And he said, "No, there's nothing." "Oh, you guys know, but he left so much." "No, I'm going to spill this milk." And he said, "Look, there's a debt of over $585 million that we have to pay as a state government, and we're paying that almost every month. And there are over 100 contractual responsibilities and liabilities in my head. Contractors who came with papers and evidence, and we saw the work. They were mobilized, but they were not paid. And it is now on our head to pay these people. And the government post is zero. How do we pay these people?" So I think Obasani has been put in a very tight corner where he needs to spill out and say what it is. People will give different political interpretation to this matter, but I tell you, it's too early to draw a conclusion on this matter until these guys take this report, governor make referral of this case to the appropriate security agencies where these people indicted will be called to defend themselves. When that is done, we'll be able to know that, okay, this is... I give you another example. We have a serving minister who has a case of over 72 billion fraud case, defrauded the state. The minister is serving. Immunity has stopped EFCC from arresting and prosecuting him. So right now he's going about as a free man, but again, time will tell. We have seen in this country where a serving governor was arrested because the president gave an order that nobody's above the law. He was prosecuted, found guilty. He served his jail term, and he came out. We have seen during the Obasanjo era, when EFCC came on board, where a lot of serving ministers, governors we're being chased by EFCC. A lot of people give it political interpretation that they were handpicking, they were chasing, but it has to start somewhere.
I mean, nothing happened in this country that is not linked to politics.
That is not linked to politics. And then, yeah, but then I've always said that, you see, the cleaning must start somehow. It must start. It must be started by someone, and somebody has to be used as an example. So wherever it's going to start, wherever it's going to be continued, is left for us to see what this result is going to be. But for me personally, yeah, what these reports are saying is quite unfortunate that the person of El-Rufai was saw transforming the face of the federal capital, coming to face to face with what is happening. It's quite disheartening, it's quite disappointing, apart from the allegations about security, incessant killings of his own people in the southern part of Kaduna State, where he played little or no role in alleviating or stopping the killings. So when you talk to El-Rufai, El-Rufai will tell you, I have no power over the military. The orders come from above. I can't call the commandant of the task force to say, go to this place, go to this place. So he exonerated himself from that. And to some extent, he is right. Because we've seen such cases in states like Plateau where shootings are going on, people are being killed as it is happening, but the person here tells you that I have not received order from above to take any action.
Like that happens
so
of time.
Yes. So the case of corruption can be real. The case of corruption can be real in Kaduna. Evidences are already laid out. Committee has done their investigation and they have submitted their report. Let's see the next step where we are being proven one time again that nobody is above the law. Arrest
it was
and
the
prosecute.
senior advocate of Nigeria, Michael Zukume, said that what God has joined together, politics will actually divide. Who ever knew that?
Exactly.
Ubasani
and El-Rufai will fall apart.
The people that are even working under Ubasani now worked under El-Rufai. So
very well.
You can look at the level of relationship between them. But I'm really particular about the response of the media aide to Nasir El-Rufai, where he said that, reacting now to the statement, he said that it was Muyiwa Adekewa. He said El-Rufai actually served Kaduna State with integrity, and he stressed that he was actually proud of his record. Now, this is just a statement without any evidence or fact, because for me, I think he has to go beyond this statement. The committee, they did their work, they presented figures, facts, even though they invited some people that were actually indicted. But do you think statement like this is actually enough coming from?
No, statement like this is actually not enough. You can't just come out to say we're innocent, we have nothing. So tell us that the numbers are showing. Tell us the numbers, tell us your own papers, tell us. For example, the El-Rufai that we know, have you read the book called The Accidental Public Servant? So if you read that book, you get to understand that the man we're talking about here is a very meticulous person when it comes to record. So that book, one part of the book is filled with letters and evidence of things he did, accusations that were false, and he proved them wrong. I want to see that happen here, right? I want to see a duplicate of the accidental public servant, that part where he defended himself on several things, brought out documents, pasted them on that book, indicted so many people, mentioned names of people who called him in a meeting and were demanding for money, demanding for bribe, and he said he wasn't going to give any bribe. He spoke boldly about those people even while they were alive. And when the book came out, none of them could go to the public and actually say, no, El-Rufai lied here, I didn't do this, I have my own evidence. So can we see an El-Rufai of the accidental public servant coming out to say, I have my evidence, I have actually documented this. Which contractor is telling you that we didn't pay him? Come, the contractor signed this document, he signed that document, and we have paid them completely. So that was just a blanket statement by Muyiwa. Let's have it backed up with evidence, with statistics, with numbers to say, we have done this and that, so that will go a long way.
Okay, still in line with the statement by his media aide Muyiwa, there's also the fact that they didn't receive any documents to even respond to the whole matter, and some people were actually invited to the committee. Ad hoc committee invited some of the people that were indicted, and they actually came, but it looks like El-Rufai was not called upon, and then he didn't have any access to the document. But then, you know, going by the principle of fair hearing, you cannot, a one-sided coin is not is a bad tender. So you cannot just conclude.
That's exactly the point I'm saying.
So you can't just conclude
Yes.
just by taking reports from one
Hearing
side.
one side of the
It
story.
should be given fair hearing.
Yes.
So, do you think that the committee did well in that aspect by not like giving everybody?
So the committee so far has not done anything wrong. What they have done is they have investigated the matter, and they said he has siphoned with his allies about 423 billion naira. And this is their conclusion. So it is a statement that needs a defense. It's a statement that El-Rufai needs to come out to say, you're lying here, or you're making a mistake here. You're saying this because you have not seen this document. And like I said earlier on, the El-Rufai will know is a documented person. He's a person that loves to document stuff. So if El-Rufai will come, I'm just waiting to see that. I'm very interested in this case. I want to see Muyewa come up, or El-Rufai himself publish statements and say, we gave 100 contractors this contract and we paid them 100% before we left. Or him saying, we have done this and we have tied this project to so and so money in so and so banks. The monies are there. These are the records. So they are not dead over you, Ubasani. We want to see that done. Until that is done, there's a danger of a single side story, according to Chimamanda. You must hear both sides of the coins. You must see them. And Rufai had to come and defend himself. And then when he's not able to provide those evidences, those documentation, then we can see you've actually siphoned over 423 billion. You have left us with over 115 contractual liabilities that we're struggling to pay right now. And then EFCC can take it up there and prosecute him. There's nobody that's above the law. Yes.
I just know that,
Yes.
like I said earlier on, a one-sided coin is actually a bad tender.
Yeah.
And nobody can be tried by proxy.
Yeah.
So let's see, like you rightly established, El-Rufai coming up with facts and figures, not
Yes.
just coming up to make statements
Exactly.
that I led with intent. I'm proud of what
Exactly.
I actually do. And
Yeah.
I think the people of Kaduna State deserve to know the truth.
Yeah.
And the former governor needs to provide factual
Definitely.
evidence, because we're talking about liability.
Yeah,
We're talking about a lot stagnation at the moment.
Yes.
Because money that is coming in is going paying debt.
That's
So
right.
the needful must actually be done, and I would really like to appreciate it because our time is fast spent. But
Thank you very much.
Social analyst and leadership consultant, I'll just
Yeah.
like you now, because this we have been having trajectories. Like I said, Nigeria is just filled with conversations.
Yes.
So how can we avoid all of this in just a minute and
Yes.
have a better nation?
So the first thing we need to do is not to see, we have overrated and misunderstand what leadership is all about. Leadership is the most difficult and the most complex subject to understand. Unfortunately, a lot of Nigerians, especially those occupying the position of leadership, think that leadership is simple. So I'll give you one example. If leadership is as simple as the way we talk about it, if it is as simple as occupying a leadership position, if it is as simple as contesting and rigging election to be declared a winner, if leadership is that simple, Nigeria would have been fixed. This is over 60 years, and our biggest problem is still leadership. Beyond Nigeria, it's Africa. Africans still do not understand leadership. Leadership is complex. Leadership has dynamics. We must understand that leadership is tough. Leadership must be truthful. Leadership must have some level of audacity to say, if you don't kill me, I'm going to kill you on this matter. But the people must be freed. Leadership must come to that level of selflessness where they understand that I'm ready to die for this cause for the next generation to move up. Until we get to that level of understanding leadership, all these are symptoms of bad leadership. They're just symptoms of bad leadership.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A leadership consultant as well as social analyst. We really appreciate your time
Thank
on
you.
National Talk.
Thank
Great
you.
perspective.
Thank you
and
very
to our
much.
viewers out there, thank you so much for staying with us on today's edition of National Talk. Governance is about the people, and our leaders must express and show this in their actions and inaction. Until we come your way next week with another edition on National Talk. My name is Joyce Jakada.